crash that one.
Yeah.
I just want to get on their screen.
Good morning, everyone. We'll call this meeting of the Community and Economic Development Committee of the Anchorage Assembly to order Thursday, March 5th, 9 a.m. We'll begin with member introductions. I'm George Martinez.
Scott Myers. Frank Johnson.
Online, we have member Brawley.
Yep, and I'll be there in a minute.
Excellent. Thank you, member Brawley. And I don't see any other members online or in person at this time. Just one note for every person who is online with us today, you'll be mic'd, muted as you come online. Stay muted unless you're spoken to. We know that the audio for everyone is better when the online mics are all muted and the only microphone that is live is the one from the room. So we'll try to do that today, and we'll keep everybody muted unless you're being spoken to, and then we'll unmute you. Thank you. We'll begin with our regular reports, and I'll turn it over to Community Development.
Morning, Bob Dole, Director for Community and Economic Development. Pleased to be with you this morning. We're doing something we haven't done in 6 years. I'm not going to take away from Greg's thunder, and that's updating the building codes. I was the building official for last time on that. And it was shortly after the 2018 earthquake, and I think we've had the benefit of learning since then. I'm going to just emphasize two things. Greg will take it away in detail when he gets to that part of the agenda. First, want to extend our appreciation to the community who helped out. This document was not written by staff. There's 100 members of the industry who assisted, providing their expertise, their time, in making sure we did something that served the needs of Anchorage. And second, when we talk about Title 23 and building codes, we got to build 10,000 houses in 10 homes. In 10 years, we know that. An important part there, though, only a well-built, safe house is an affordable house. And we proved that after the 2018 earthquake. The buildings that fell apart led the way in foreclosures. Those were some real painful, difficult discussions I had to have as building official back then. We also saw condos where each unit was assessed $120,000, $180,000 special assessment because of those damages. So as we go forward in talking about building codes, it's a safe house is an affordable house. I think it's the takeaway, and also the community really stepped up to assist with these. And I'll be followed by Greg for his regular update.
Good morning, Greg Soule. Thanks, Bob. I appreciate the comments. I'll keep my updates pretty short today since we do have our presentation in new business. And actually, I'll be handing the reins off to Daniel King for that presentation. As I'm sure a lot of you guys know, Daniel really headed up the saw the 10 committees when it came to updating the code. So he'll be presenting on that this morning. My brief update that I have for today is, as you know, the Assembly did approve the sole source contract for our implementation consultant. I thank you all very much for that. We signed that contract. Should be, hopefully this week. We will schedule our kickoff meeting with the vendor and get the software update underway. So we're all very excited for that. That's going to be our primary focus going forward to really make sure that we have successful implementation. So I'll end it there. Any questions?
Any questions? No questions. Feel free to just popcorn into the next person on the list.
Morning, Millie Staff, Planning Director. I want to start out by saying that we do have some positions open in the department. We're currently hiring for, I believe, 3 positions, one of which is our zoning and land use review manager. So please send people our way if you know of anyone. I also wanted to give a little bit of a brief update on some projects headed to the Assembly in the next month or so, and then I'll hand it over to Foster to finish off the list. The first and foremost project that is on my mind these days is the 10-year targeted comprehensive plan review. That is a targeted review of the comprehensive plan that we started last year. We've been working with PCC on it for almost a year now, and we have posted some materials on our website. We're looking for comments from the public. We are also circulating the materials amongst the departments and amongst staff for review and comment. So if you would like a link to that, let me know. It's on the planning website under the long range planning division website. And then in addition to that, we are sending the Parks Rezone project to the Assembly. I'm thinking it might be up for introduction March 24th. That's an exciting project because that is something that will be implementing the comprehensive plan. It's something that councils have been asking for a long time. So that has been on the department to-do list for decades at this point, and I am excited to bring it to the Assembly this month.
For that, just to acknowledge, our member Brawley's in person with us, and member McCormick has joined us on the phone as well. Just one question to follow up with the planning director, if there are any other questions. Positions not filled and impact of work. Is there a relationship between those particular positions, the work that we expect impacted, and can you describe that for us?
Sure, of course. There is a little bit of an impact, especially in zoning and land use review, because we've not only had empty positions, but people have been hit by the bug that's going around, and the department has been devastated over the last month or so with a lot of outages due to it. However, staff in that division have been stepping up and it's been a little bit of overtime, but they have been able to cover within the expected time frame pretty well, despite the lack of staffing in that division. So yes, an impact on staff, but maybe not as much of an impact on the actual review times.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Thanks for the update on the plan review, targeted review. I'd love to talk more about that, but offline probably. And then I guess just a couple notes as well relevant to this. So I know the Urban Design Commission repeal ordinance that I've put forward is moving forward. Just wondering, I know there's work sessions scheduled. When might that come back to the Assembly, assuming that there isn't kind of a follow-up action?
As soon as the work sessions have been completed, then we'll be taking that, on base for a place on the Assembly agenda. That usually takes us a few weeks from that point to actually appearing on an agenda. It is your ordinance. If you have a faster way of doing that after the work sessions, then maybe we can go on the actual process.
Yeah, just an update because I know that was introduced and then is going over there. And then, sorry, I have a question. Can't think of it. Never mind.
No problem. We'll come back to it if it pops up.
And then we do have a few more things to talk about.
Yeah.
That's right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, Daniel McKenna Foster, Long Range Planning. I'll go through these very quickly, but we do have a lot going on. On Monday night, the Planning and Zoning Commission discussed Planning and Zoning Case 2025-138, which looked at updating the future land use plan for a number of properties across the bowl. That was to help a lot of our institutions sort of work their long range plans. One of the aspects of that was part of Track J, north of Government Hill. So you may see that, but basically by changing the future land use designation on the map, it allows that to become parkland as soon as that subdivision process goes through and it's in line with the code. Because of the success of that project, we're looking at bringing forward another phase of those types of changes to the land use plan map later this year, probably in West Anchorage and some other stuff in Ship Creek. The Legacy Rezones project is underway, going to planning and zoning next week. That's getting rid of the TR, D2, E4 zones that were supposed to be phased out in 2014. So we're moving through the process of getting those properties updated to modern zoning. Right now, it's sort of like if you're in D2, it basically says you go to R2M anyway. So fixing that. Omnibus number 1, which is really just technical fixes, going to the Assembly later this month for introduction. Director mentioned Parks Rezone. We've got some B3 changes coming up. One of those was an ordinance from AO 2025-63 that members Rivera and Brawley worked on last year. And we added on to that with some mixed use B3 updates. So those are PCC cases 2026-35 and 2026-34. Agriculture and food production AO is ordinance 2026-32. That I think is moving through the process. A lot of good feedback on that. We're updating the wetlands plan. That's going to the Planning and Zoning Commission on April 20th. So there's going to hear from the state to start building on that, but really the intent of that is to update the basics of it. And soon we're going to start updating wetlands mapping. So we're trying to establish more certainty for mapping and wetlands for the rest of the year. Eagle River RFP will be coming out soon. And other than that, we're also looking at moving AMCR 2190 into the DCM in chapter 2107. We haven't figured out quite where that will be, so we're working with traffic and development services on that. And then finally, we've been tracking the rezones to implement the comprehensive plan, which I believe was AO 2025-40S, which agreed with the process. So far, we've tracked 11 of them. Just looking back before that tool was in place, I think probably 3 or 4 times what we used to see. So 11 isn't that many, but in past years, I think 24, we had maybe 2 or 3. So it's pretty good to see that. We heard some good feedback about that at the Planning and Zoning Commission Monday night. So that tool is being used and is delivering results. So that's pretty good. So glad to answer any questions.
Thank you. I did think of my other question, and it was actually sounds like a project already underway, getting rid of the old zones essentially. So basically, does that mean when those properties are rezoned that the old Title 21 officially goes away? Because I know it's in our codes, and it's still referred to, even though it doesn't apply to most things anymore. Just wondering, like, at what point does it actually go away?
Just before you answer, for the record, member Baldwin Day is joined us about 5 minutes ago as well, about 6 after.
Through the chair. So yeah, for one thing, for nonconformities, we always have a copy of the old code, so we can always refer back to it if something applies. And there are actually even still a few more TR is the transition zone. So there are a few more pieces of that. So that might take a little bit longer, but in general, it will mean that almost no properties are referring to the old code. So it might still be there, but you won't be directing any from the public. Okay, you have to go back to this other code that isn't really posted anywhere else. So for like 90% of the people, everybody will be using Title 21. We'll always have a whole Title 21, but it is getting there. I don't think you can take it out of Muni code just yet, but it's a step.
No, and to clarify that, I don't foresee us being able to take it out of Muni code for a long while. Just due to the PCDs, the PUDs, and the SLs that exist in our zoning code and still refer to old code. So until we can clean all of that up as well, I don't expect old code to go away entirely anytime soon.
So the rewrite was a generational project, really. It's like, thanks.
Any other questions? See any? Thank you. Okay, and we'll move forward to real estate.
Good morning, Tiffany Briggs, Real Estate Director. Few updates. We have an ordinance that should be getting introduced at the March 24th meeting. This is to dispose of 2 parcels at less than fair market value to Habitat. We previously had received authorization to competitively dispose of these parcels. We did that. We didn't receive any bids. They've kind of been passively listed for sale. So would be looking to transfer those to Habitat. They plan to have construction completed on both parcels within 5 years. So we would be putting a reversionary clause that if that didn't happen, it would come back to the muni. On the HLB side, we had our monthly meeting with Connie yesterday regarding Holton Hills. Survey work is 75% complete. Northern Geotechnical is going to be drilling some test holes, 8 test holes, and that is going to start on March 10th. And they are working on their lot reservation form. Not sure when that's going to be, but they're working on the language and whatnot. The Tozier Track parcel, HLB staff are working with Stantec to conduct hazardous materials testing on those 2 structures that are still over there, and to complete a market demand study of the area to determine the best and highest use of the parcel. And that work is being funded through the Brownfields grant. And then our two plating actions that we have in Girdwood, the survey crews have set the property corners and working through the final steps to get those plats recorded within the next couple months. That's it.
Any questions? I don't see any questions. Thank you.
Chair, I do have a question.
Hey, Chair. Okay, right on. Feel free to jump in.
Thank you. Ms. Briggs, can you share the location of the vessels that are being transferred to Habitat?
Oh, sure. Yes. One is at the corner of 4th and Pine, and then the other is at the corner of 4th and Klondike.
Lovely, thank you.
We'll move forward to Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kent Colhase, Public Works Director. Our updates are more operational than perhaps the Planning Development Services Department, but in the world of maintenance and operations, I did send an email, I think, to all members in the past week or so explaining the widening efforts that are going on across town. We typically have between 5 and 6 crews working during the day, 3 crews working at night, widening mostly residential streets now, but a few of the mains that they're still working on. So that's a significant effort for them. Street maintenance supported, as did right away another department supported for Rondi. I think it was a very successful effort. Of course, street maintenance provides the snow for the snow sculptures as well as the snow for the races. And they'll be moving in probably this afternoon, start setting up for the Iditarod. So they really enjoy that work and take a lot of pride in it. Still in maintenance and operations in the fleet world, we are outfitting a number of the police shop and the radio shop are outfitting a number of new police cars. There's no patrol cars this time. There's I think 12 Broncos for detectives. There's a number of Mavericks that are going to be used by the community service officers and then some other vehicles. So I've been coordinating pretty heavily between fleet and APD to work to meet their needs. That's moving along. And I guess the last thing in the maintenance and operations world, we have received 4 new Sanders that came in that we purchased with the $3.5 million levy that the voters approved last year. Those are on property. I think 1 or 2 are operational, and the others are being undergoing the final fitting with radios and other equipment will be on the road soon. And in addition, we have the last tranche of our trackless. Trackless is a brand name. It's the sidewalk tractors. We purchased, I believe, 14 of those with AMATS funding. The last 5 have just arrived. So there'll be a benefit this year and certainly next year. In the traffic world, some metrics they use with respect, I think, to documented traffic speed, traffic volumes, things like that. I could provide more information if folks want to that. We'll get that, but that is something that they work on every year, and then they use the bond funding to implement those programs. And then they are also working on getting their projects out to bid, which aligns with my next update, which is PM&E. They're working on getting about 15 construction projects out to bid. So you'll start seeing a number of AM coming through the assembly, some before the election. Many of them will be after the election because they are funded with bonds that are on the election, presuming the bonds pass. The mayor, I think folks may know, the mayor is working on an open house for March 19th. And with respect to the upcoming bond proposition, and departments will be staffing that to provide information to voters. The last thing I'd mention in the PM&E world is that the department worked with the administration and provided information on possible congressionally designated spending grant for pedestrian safety improvements on 3rd Avenue and 15th. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess one other thing I'd mention is that in the downtown arena, there's a lot of work happening this summer. Paratrovich Park, Town Square. EM&E has some work to replant some trees in a number of locations downtown. We're going to replace some sidewalks. I'm certain I'm missing a number of projects. There are 10 or 15 large projects that are happening out there. So the municipal managers convened a working group to align the project managers on all those groups so that we make sure that if we close a road, we're not closing all the roads in the area and adversely affecting businesses to the degree we can. So that's an effort that started last week, and we'll be having some regular meetings with that group and assembling a project management calendar so that all the project managers can be aware of those impacts. And then, of course, we'll have an outreach. Each project manager always has public outreach to affected businesses in the area. But that's a comprehensive effort to try to minimize the impacts downtown while implementing a number of large projects downtown. I'd answer any questions folks may have.
Yes, we'll begin with Member Brawley in the queue.
Yeah, two different questions. One, I'm guessing it's in the stack of things moving forward, but update on the work for 100th and Victor.
I believe, Member Brawley, I believe that is coming to the assembly in the next meeting.
Okay.
For approval for award.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, because I know that area, obviously big, that four-way intersection's a pain. Which I know it's going to take a while to actually fix, but so folks have been asking about that. Other question is just in general with snow or widening the roads. I really appreciate the update you gave. I think it was helpful, and I know we've probably all heard frustration about narrow roads and the explanation about the snow, and just it's a math problem, right? That we only have so many trucks. But I was curious if you have a sense roughly what percentage of our city roads have been, have had that addressed, the road widening, or like where are we in that kind of stack?
I don't have a percentage. I did hear from the department yesterday that they think that in the next 2 to 3 weeks, they should have the bulk of the road. I'll verify that and get back to you, Member Brawley, and other members who may be interested.
Okay, and I know that's pending, of course, another snowstorm or,
Yes,
whatever, but yeah, it seems like anecdotally, I've just seen more roads that have gotten taken care of, so thanks for that.
Kent, I'll follow up as well with a remark and a question. Do a good job this year. I would say year over year, we're improving, and I feel like the investments that the assembly has authorized that are hitting the streets, and it's good to see it in work. I also think that the reclassification project that folks did around the sidewalk machinery operators to give a kind of a different level of opportunity for employment.
Yes.
And the way, what that's meant to us in terms of staffing has been significant. Do you have a sense of, I can only deal with anecdotal, and then some of that anecdotal comes from constituent feedback. The sheer number of constituent complaints has decreased 100-fold from my vantage point from the year of what we called Snowmageddon. On data-wise, the amount of snow, they say this is a historic snow load year as well. So we're into snow load years, different between the amount, the speed, but equipment, we're also very different. So there have been meaningful differences. What I kind of want to get a sense is, are we doing more plowing? Is there more happening this year? It felt like within 5 days after a major snowstorm, we saw things happening in a way that was markedly different. Have there been more plowings this year than in the past? And is that because of equipment, or why are we seeing what I think is more of an effective operation happening?
I think there's a few things, Mr. Chair. I think we have received, in addition to having more staff on board in this winter than we had the luxury of in previous winters. Paul and his folks have done a great job in attracting and hiring folks. The conversion of you're talking about the seasonal positions, we converted them to street maintenance assistants, which allowed us to bring in entry-level people who may not have CDL. That has helped. We have new equipment. We're just receiving graders that are purchased with the levy, but even prior to that, we had made some investments in equipment. Some of our graders were well beyond their useful life and would break down, so we're seeing fewer breakdowns. I think those certainly help. I think that, the Snowmageddon year, the snow came so fast and so heavy in such a compressed period of time that it was just infeasible to plow out the city in our target of 72, 84, 96, even 120 hours, given the concentration of snow that came at one time. What we saw in January this year were with snowfall after snowfall after snowfall, but generally they were far enough apart that we had time for our crews to meet that metric. So I'd say it's a mix of things. It's more equipment, some more staffing, and the timing of the snow, I think, really plays into the snow events, plays into how easily we can meet the metrics in our snow plan.
This helps me understand is the level of sustained investment and commitment to being able to maintain a certain level of operation, let alone if we want to improve. More equipment hitting the streets, more folks doing the work, are the things we can control. Because we don't control the weather as much as people may otherwise imagine.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, some other things that Paul Van Landingham and his crew are working on, and we have bought equipment towards that end. We are going to have sand trucks that are equipped with both nose plows and belly plows, so they can assist in the plowing effort. We used to have belly plows years and years ago, and they went away for some reason that nobody recalls. This was 20 years or so ago. But they're useful, and they can team up with a grader on certain streets and certain subdivisions, which frees up a grader then to work. So you won't see much benefit this year because those sanders are just coming online, but next year we'll have a fleet of them equipped and ready to go.
That is good news. And one other question around berms, because if there's one complaint aside from lightning, and I think y'all have done a remarkable job. It's just even getting around and to it. I think that even when a complaint is coming around widening, it's still within a time period of the work, your kind of timetable, and the work has gotten completed in a way that constituents have felt responsiveness. So I really appreciate that. Is there new equipment? And I felt like somebody mentioned this a while ago. Is there a new equipment that somehow making berms worse?
Not that
Or it's just the sheer amount of snow.
it's the sheer amount.
I would imagine that it's just heavy and stacking up.
It's the sheer amount of snow. I used to do that job, and the gate on the end of the grader that is supposed to contain snow as you pass the driveway can only contain so much snow. If you have more than 6 or so inches of snow in a snowfall, it spills over. And if you have 10 or 12 inches, it spills over significantly.
So it's not a joystick problem with some new mechanical thing that we just don't know how to use well. All right.
It's the volume of snow.
Right on. I appreciate that. And I thought that
I did see it. Somebody has their hand up.
cool. And yes, remember Baldwin Day?
Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair. Mr. Colhase, I wanted to put a pin on a couple of Mr. Martinez's comments and just reiterate how fantastic the municipal snow removal has been, particularly on the sidewalk, which my constituents in Midtown really appreciate. I did want to mention that one of the other things we cannot control when it comes to snow removal in Anchorage is the work of our partners at Alaska DOT. And it seems to me that as muni maintenance has improved this summer or this winter rather, the maintenance from DOT has suffered pretty significantly, and the bulk of the negative feedback I have received has been about DOT maintained roads and specifically sidewalks. So I'm curious, is there a way to compel Alaska DOT to be somewhat more responsive to the concerns that we raise? I've gotten the runaround in a variety of ways from maintenance and operations at the state level. And it strikes me that that's really unacceptable. So I would love to hear thoughts perhaps offline about how we might cultivate a different relationship with those folks. Because what's happening now, at least in my district, is unacceptable. So just wanted to put that on the record that muni maintenance, top shelf, Alaska DOT maintenance, pretty miserable. Thank you.
Chair, yeah, if I may, absolutely. I saw the note there with, we're having challenges in this room. We're working to get them resolved. When somebody online unmutes and they're speaking, if we can remember to mute in here, it stops that feedback. If we don't mute in here, they get a significant echo, and it's very challenging online to speak and train of thought.
Thank you.
So what you all heard was the person behind the curtain giving us the, what's happening with the real-time broadcast problem. But if you are online, when you're speaking, we here have to mute so that this way there's one microphone live on both spaces, online or in the room at a time. Right on. And Mr. Colhase is the voice behind the production comment there. Do you want to respond?
Certainly.
Comments?
Through the chair to Member Baldwin and to everyone. We work at both an operational level and a coordination level with the DOT on a very regular basis. I know that at the field level, and landing constant contact, certainly during snow events, with Casey Eliason and his team. In addition, the administration is in discussions, and I've been involved in some of them with the management level that DOT, it's a regular topic of discussion. We know that they are challenged with respect to resources and resources both in I presume in equipment and perhaps in personnel. And we know that they have explained to us that their highest priorities are the high-speed roads, the high-traffic roads. But we have conveyed to them, and I know they've received complaints directly from constituents and members as well, the concerns about or challenges with sidewalk maintenance. And matter of fact, I spoke with Kurt Warren, who's the head of maintenance, just last week about that. And we're gonna continue to coordinate at the operational level. That's about all we can do, is continue to talk with them. But I guess I would offer that there are discussions between the administration and DOT management regarding this as well.
Member Baldwin, you have a follow-up comment, and we're going to try to get the audio right here. So we'll mute here and you'll go live.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Oh, that's much better. Wow. Yeah, I appreciate that. And I absolutely recognize that Paul is, doing yeoman's work to coordinate with DOT. And I do understand that there are both staffing and equipment challenges at the central region. Oh, the echo's back.
All right, you're back online, and we didn't hear you from the beginning. So if you wouldn't mind.
You click the microphone at the top there where it says MIC. Higher. Oh. Sorry.
Can you hear me now? Yes. Okay, thank you. Thanks for the thumbs up. Yeah, I appreciate that that coordination is happening, and I know that Mr. Van Landingham is in communication with DOT, and I'm sympathetic to the fact that they have staffing and equipment challenges here in Anchorage, particularly. I think what's difficult about that is that it's been reported, and I'm tracking down the verification for this as well, that the staffing in Anchorage is fairly similar in terms of maintenance and operations to the staffing in Juneau and Fairbanks, which to me is a policy choice, and that's a staffing decision that's been made when, obviously DOT maintains significantly more road miles in sensitive areas here in Anchorage than elsewhere in the state. And so again, I'm empathetic to the shortage of equipment and personnel to do the work here. what I'm less empathetic about is the fact that that decision appears to have been made knowingly, and that starts to grate, as a policymaker who is hearing in real time the issues and the challenges that my constituents are having moving around the city safely. It becomes, I become less empathetic, I guess is what I'm getting at, particularly when this appears to be a perennial challenge. And so, when a partner at the state level says we are working on it, but then nothing changes year over year, I struggle to believe that anything is actually being done in a different manner to achieve a different outcome. I appreciate your coordination, Mr. Kohlheas, and I absolutely believe that you and everyone else in the Muni is doing their dead level best. I just question the responsiveness of our partner, and ultimately, at some far future date, would love to see the municipality assume responsibility for all of our winter maintenance in Anchorage, because quite frankly, we do it better. So there's perhaps a long range conversation to be had about that. But thank you for the work that you do and for your efforts to coordinate with our partners at the state level.
And I have just two final comments, a question for Mr. Kohlheas, and then we'll move on. Yeah, let me just put more bluntly. It's terrible when our sidewalks looking real good and I'm driving through the community feeling like, yeah, we're on top of it. And then the next night, the DOT trucks jack it all up. And our sidewalks are like, what the heck trash is this? So we're doing a really good job. It's getting jacked up and it's costing us more because of the lack of coordination. So we want a year-round city. The coordination plays an actual role, but it's just jacked up and it's shitting on, I'm sorry, it is pooping on our work, and it looked really good. And the good news is you got back to it, right? And so you didn't leave the streets there. And I'm thinking of DeBar, because you've had a lot of presence on DeBar this year and all across the entire corridor. And there are pockets that I just don't recall being able to walk for years. And DOT tries their best to restore that lack of walkability, but we seem to be on top of it. So great job, we're on top of it, but it's costing us absolutely additional work because of that coordination question. And the other question I have is, when you're doing your data analysis around lowering speed limits downtown, are we using, in something that I've asked for, in terms of, in my world, the relationship between speeds and economic development? Because presumably the speeds create more walkability or commercial activity in the downtown corridor that people are looking for. But I think of the corridors like Muldoon, which is Strode, a 45-mile-per-hour road on an economic corridor that's identified specifically for economic development. And it's also a corridor with a high incident and pedestrian traffic incident corridor. So we have a high traffic corridor with economic development designated to be town center. But the municipal road goes through it. So I just want us to have the lessons learned and the data that supports why lowering speeds might be both safe, but also economic, because for Muldoon businesses, we prefer businesses or cars to stop than to just fly right through our neighborhood. We don't mind getting through our neighborhood so we don't have people who don't want to be there stuck in traffic, but we know that high speeds keeps people out of businesses and they just cut right through them. So we know there's a relationship. We'd love to have just that being part of the conversation moving forward. Right on. There are no additional things for now. Let's continue to move on for the agenda. We'll come around to before we get into the new business items, we'll give an opportunity for any audience participation and come back around to that at the end. I see ACDA's here. Do you want to give an update, Mr. Roberts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, just a couple of quick things. I know we have a lot on the agenda. Just want to remind the members that AO 2026-24 is coming up on the March 24th agenda. And that's the transfer of the lots underneath the old Nordstrom's building to ACDA for development. just want to encourage your support of that AO. Beyond the Beige is kicking off tomorrow. It's the downtown grant program. That's a partnership between the mayor's office and ACDA. Encourage you to notify or go to your constituents to go to our website and participate in that. We've closed the RFI on the Fireweed Flats housing project on Fireweed Boulevard, and we'll be issuing the RFP next week. Also closed the RFI on the Third and Ingra RV resort, and we're meeting with our single respondent on that RFI week after next to discuss next steps. Proud to announce that the weekend market is returning downtown, which is a huge economic impact on our downtown during the summer. We have a new contractor that we're very excited about, actually a partnership between two contractors, Absolutely and Erickson Unlimited, which is Krista George and Brad Erickson. They'll be taking over the market. We're very excited about the results of that. So join us Memorial Day to Labor Day for the downtown market. Thank you.
Question number all.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for all the updates. One question, and we could continue conversation offline. I was talking with somebody about, for example, utilizing vacant storefronts or, you know, sometimes temporary uses, things like that to bring some life back. I don't know if there's an existing program to do that with ACDA or if you guys have talked about it. Obviously, it requires the private, you know, property owner to agree to it. But it seems like there's some possibilities to make space for arts activities or other kind of pop-up uses. So anyway, just wondered if that was something that's in the works or an existing program. Otherwise, maybe something we could.
Through the chair to Member Brawley, that's a great idea, actually.
And it's not, I
We don't have that program. No, we don't have a program like that, but it would be a great idea to work with property owners and say, hey, look, can we come up with an activity that's going to focus attention on your vacant place for 3 or 6 months while you're trying to rent it? That's an excellent idea. We'll talk about that. That's a really good idea.
I'm going to jump in on that and say the municipality of Anchorage is a wonderful place for great ideas that go sit on a shelf and then they come back. It's not Member Brawley's recycling a great idea, but institutionally, ACDA has had a history of a conversation with the Live Work Play Committee that had a grant a few years ago from, and John Bittner's over there now at the AEDC.
AEDC, yes.
One of those letter organizations around economic development, but there was a grant. We actually did some of this work a decade ago. So there's probably some groundwork already laid to get going aggressively rather than kind of really deliberate a lot about that. So great idea for activation. There's work that we could probably tap into to get moving a little faster than not.
Thank you for that.
Right on, absolutely. I love your go-get-em attitude as a development authority.
So I'm
Appreciate
ADC on this call. Sorry. So I can bring this to Johnson once he starts on the 16th when he gets out here.
The acting ADC.
Hey, right on.
Heather.
Thank you. And we don't have any, you're done, Mr. Robbins?
Yes, sir. I am. Thank you.
Right. We'll look forward to the conversation later on with you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. We don't have any unfinished business. We have 2 agenda items for some substantial discussion, but at this time, just to check the room, are there any members of the public here that will be speaking later on or want some comment time? I don't see any. I have one person. We have another person that wants to say something, comment? We're going to hold space for you, Mr. Baxter. Thank you. And I wanted to just take the temperature check on that. So I have you down, Mr. Baxter. Thank you. And we'll turn into first new business discussion, and I'll turn it over to who's this? Mr. King is going to lead discussion, and we'll have a 10-minute presentation and then open it, or is it, that's too much time? Perfect. And then we'll have any conversations from members, and we'll try to cap this at a 20-minute total. Oh, thank you, Mr. King.
Got the clicker. You would be here. Sure. Nice.
All right. So hello, everybody. Welcome to Assembly Ordinance 2026-33. This is our update to Title 23. That's the short title for it.
I don't know.
I'm gonna stand back here next to the computer. So you good? Well, now it's working. Okay. That was the short title. Here is our longer title. Okay, this ordinance is actually going to repeal 1075, which is fire inspection fees. Those get rolled into the fire chapter of the building code. That was a request from licensing. And then it also will repeal and reenact, I think, 11 chapters of the building code. These are all of the building codes that get updated every 3 years. So it's a lot of sections that we went through. In this process, the code committee meetings were set up. We had representatives from the building board on every one of our code committees. We had over 100 professionals in the community. That includes reviewers and inspectors from within the department, but also professional engineers, architects, contractors, developers. We're all involved with this process. So first, I want to just say thank you to the building board for your participation and all of the representatives from the community to help. This is a big process. It was started in January of 2025, and it continued through the summer. And then in the fall, we met with the building board twice to go over and approve all of the recommendations. We also met with the on-site tech board for some updates to the well and septic fees that we were proposing. And we're still in communication with the Alaska State Fire Marshal for one of the updates, which will be part of our significant changes that I will talk to you about. A little bit of background on what the committee's goals were. First and foremost, we had to be able to educate the group in these committees on what those changes are. At the national level, every 3 years, these codes come out and they update, they make changes with recommendations at the national level. We as a municipality did not adopt the interim 2021 code. So we had to be able to educate not just on changes from 2018 to 2021, but then 2021 to 2024. An example of that would be in 2018, that blue text at the top. 2018, they adopted a section on occupied roofs because a lot of people are interested in having rooftop parties. We thought we should tell people how to do that, how to handle that, because that's an added occupant load. So that became occupied roofs in the code at the national level. In 2021, they refined some of the requirements for the number of stories and the height of the buildings that could be applicable for these. And so that was an interim change that happened in 2021. And then in 2024, they changed the term from occupied roofs to occupiable roofs to try and define the difference, whether your intent is that it could be occupied, that's an occupiable roof. So if you were trying to say, oh, we'll only do it in the summer, that's occupiable. Oh, we're only going to do it 1 month out of the year or one time out of the year, that is occupiable. And so we need to be able to capture that. This is one of those things that was really difficult to capture for the committees, is to say, okay, well, this happened in 2021. We want you to know that this was an important change. And then now this other change happened in 2024. So these kind of things take a while. That is to help advise on substantial changes that can affect Anchorage, right? We need to be able to tell them all of this stuff. What we then did is discuss local issues to construction and propose and adopt local amendments for our local conditions and constraints. Things that affect Anchorage specifically. What is our capabilities to regulate? What is our capabilities as a very cold climate, trying to deal with those issues? An example would be the code has for a long time had a section on unvented room heaters. And we have historically amended out that section completely because it's not a safe condition in an area where you likely need to use this room heater 6 months out of the year, right? So we want to make sure that if you do have a room heater in the fuel gas room heater, that is going to be vented to the exterior. So this is an example of a local amendment that we think is important to Anchorage because of the conditions that we deal with. One other note on this update from 2018 to 2024 is we went through our insurance rating and currently we are at a 5. We were previously at a 3. 1 would be the best you can get. And we were at a 3. We are now at a 5 because we had not adopted the 2021 code. Once we adopt the 2024, we will be able to go back to a 3 with ISO. They'll work with us for this change that's coming. So. A note on the building safety service area for those that are or are not familiar, the building safety service area, all of Anchorage is supposed to abide by the Title 23 building codes. But we have a building safety service area that requires that you get a building permit, building plan review, and building inspection. Everywhere outside of this building safety service area, the blue area on the map is optional. So Eagle River, Tugiak, Girdwood, all of those areas don't require a building permit. They still require land use permits, but they do not require a building permit, which was perfect fodder for a research project out of the University of Colorado Boulder and the University of Notre Dame, where they found it fascinating that we have this strong line of regulation versus non-regulation, and they wanted to do research on it. What they found, they looked at the hillside on residential buildings built between 2018 and 2023 on either side of the nice straight arbitrary line that we have for the building safety area. And they found that there was not a difference in the sale value of any of the houses in a cost per square foot case, but they did find that stuff within the building safety service area, the BSSA, was more complex, usually was a larger house, more complex designs where you potentially have living over garages, more re-entering corners, which is instead of having a box, you have odd shapes and sizes on your building. They posit that there is higher confidence within the building safety service area to do more interesting designs. Whereas outside of that, if you're not going to have building review, they think that maybe you'll feel safer, risk aversion, and you'll just build a simpler box. All right, so now we can go over some of the significant changes. I'm going to try and just go over the highlights. And if someone wants to tell me if I have got a lot of time or a little bit of time, there are more significant changes that you can see in Exhibit B, but these were some of the bigger ones that I thought would be good to touch on. A significant change in the admin code is when a building permit is required. One of the big changes we made was for non-structural modifications to homes. We went from a $5,000 limit to a $10,000 limit. It's been $5,000 since at least 2003, and controlling for inflation, that would go up to at least $10,000 now. This is for things like repairing your roof when there's roof damage. If it's under $10,000 to do it, you don't need to get a building permit. Replacing drywall, as long as it's not a firewall, you can do that without a building permit when it's smaller areas. Yes.
Why do we use a dollar value for this? I mean, I can kind of understand sort of to say like if it's a smaller project, then we'll keep the cost down. But I mean, if we require these building permits for safety reasons, shouldn't it be defined by something other than the project cost?
And part of the challenge with that, I think, is that when you remove drywall within a building, the more work you're doing, it's going to trigger the enforcement of us coming in to make sure that you're not doing something that you shouldn't, right? Under $10,000, if you're replacing a piece of drywall, we don't want you to replace firewalls without a permit. That is a life safety risk. But the smaller cost for that replacement, it allows us to try and capture when that happens. We can come in and go, okay, that actually is a section of firewall, and we do need to do something. So if it looks like a small amount of work, it's easier for enforcement.
Kind of a way for us to get a handle on the scope, project scope, essentially. But as Daniel stated, 5,000 is an outdated number, so.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I can understand why we increased that amount. It just seems like an interesting metric. And I guess, is that fairly common practice?
I don't know if it's fairly common practice. We've had it since 2003. I think it was actually before when we had the Uniform Building Code as well. But yeah, it's been in place for a long time. It allows us to capture some of this work. Let's say for like a roof, that $10,000 limit, if you're replacing roof shingles, a piece of the section because there was some damage, obviously we're less concerned about that. But when you're doing a full re-roof, we'd have more concerns about making sure that everything gets put back correctly. But we do know that replacing a section of roofing for under $5,000 doesn't always happen, right? You're usually not going to have to get into all of the underlayments, but just replacing the shingles alone could be $6,000 on a piece of the roof. So we're trying to capture that and say, well, we want to let you do some repairs on your house without a permit, without inspections, but not all of it.
Thanks.
Another change in the admin code is for mobile food units and shelter units. These are two sections that modify the requirements for the building permit. The previous version of this language was that no building permit is required. But further into the section, it says electrical permit is required, which is a building permit. So it is a little confusing, and people wanting to put in a mobile food unit get confused in the process. This also does not exempt you from a land use permit. So if you were required to, if you wanted to put in a mobile food unit and you tried to just go put it in because you thought you didn't need a building permit, it's not true. You'd still need an electrical permit, which is a building permit, and you still need a land use permit, which inside the BSSA is handled as a building permit. So our proposed update to the language was that you will obtain a building permit, but you will be exempt from the building review and the building inspections, except for as listed in this language in this section, right? That clarifies that you will get a building permit so that you do know that you have to come in here. It does not confuse people in the public when they want to put in a new mobile food unit. But it also helps them know that there is a process still that you have to go through. We saw this was a problem for one of the Central Lutheran Church when they were doing the first shelter units project. They came in with just electrical drawings, and they were confused why they had to go through zoning. Because they heard that there was no building permit required, but you still have to meet zoning code requirements to put this in. So we wanted to make sure that we could capture that. You will get a building permit, go through the regular process. And then the fee tables. Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. Fee tables was another big adjustment that we made. We're proposing adding a limit to the number of inspections that can be included on commercial permits. We already have a limit on the number of inspections included with a residential permit. You get 23 inspections at a base level on a residential permit. And if you go over that amount, then you pay for those on an inspection by inspection basis. Commercial though, if you spend $50,000 on your construction valuation or $1 million on your construction valuation, you get the same number of permit inspections, which is infinite. We thought that was a little much. And so what we've done is put a limit on that. We based it on the inspections that were completed on fully completed projects between 2020 and 2024. And we came up with a limit based on that. In this case, the inspection limits that we put in, 1% of permits under $1 million will go over, meaning that after $1 million of construction valuation, 1% of those permits will have inspections over the amount that they're allotted, and they'll just pay for those on an inspection by inspection basis. 8% between $1 million and $5 million will go over. One of the big benefits that we've tried to see in this is this has allowed us to increase the number of residential inspections that we can offer. We were originally saying 23 inspections were going to be given, and then over 500,000, you would get 2 more for every 100,000 that you paid. We are now just moving that to 23 inspections, and every 100,000, you are going to get 2 more inspections. You'll see in the middle. This is actually. Oh, okay, you'll see in the middle. This section right here between the green and orange, those are all the inspections that will be paid for when you pay for your permit. What happens is people will come in to close out their permit and find out that they have a ton of inspections that they didn't realize that they were going to have to pay for. All of that's now captured. So you have 15 percentage points reduction in the number of residential permits that are going to go over when they close out their permit. So you don't have to pay a big fee at the end. Aaron?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. 23 is a really interesting number. Where does that come from?
Great question. No idea. I don't have history on that. It's been in place for a while. Bob?
Bob Dole, Director of Community Economic Development, previous building official. When we looked at that 6 years ago, it basically was developed as an average of what was necessary for the different trades to get through a residential structure going forward. By the time you factor in structural, mechanical, plumbing, electrical, we found that number would predominantly cover most places going forward. It was frankly a statistical analysis from permits the prior 10 years, but had been in place before then, but we revalidated it that way.
Right.
Thank you. That is fascinating.
That's something I've noticed, Daniel. Greg Sully, Development Services. One of the other benefits we see to limiting the commercial inspections as opposed to just unlimited is this will really incentivize the subcontractors and the generals from just basically scheduling partial inspections here and there, which should actually speed up construction times and, limit the amount of times that our trips out there, basically they'll have to do it right and they'll be more incentivized to do it right the first time and do it complete.
Yes. We also will be doubling the number of inspections included on retro permits. Typically, it's a inspection by inspection for a retro. A retro would be replacing your water heater, extending some electrical outlet, or small projects like that for a trade. And so you'd usually pay for every single inspection. But for a water heater, sometimes you'll get everything installed and you pay $175 for your permit fee, and then we have to come back out a second time because there's a correction. And then that just is an additional charge to the public that we don't think is necessary. So we want to make that a $350 benefit to them at $175. So you'll pay a $175 fee and you get 2 inspections with that. So if there is corrections, you're not going to get charged a second time at the end of your project. We think that's a really big benefit to the homeowners, but also the contractors, where it gets confusing what's paid, what's not paid. Most stuff is going to get done in 2 inspections. And that's only possible by us making these other adjustments to limit other things. We can try and make it easier for more residential projects to move forward. But it's not working. I can. All right, now to the fun stuff. Okay, our big change in the International Building Code is going to be for single exit buildings. This was a proposal from the public and was considered by our architects and engineers on not only the International Building Code, but also the International Fire Code. And the discussion was to allow up to 4 dwelling units per floor. Current code allows you to go up to 3 stories tall. We are now proposing that you can go up to 6 stories tall and only have 1 exit in the building. This is a big conversation nationally, and other jurisdictions like New York and Seattle and Hawaii all have local amendments to allow similar things. And so we've been working really hard to come up with a way to do this safely. And this should really incentivize more residential construction on smaller lots to try and get more residential units installed in town. We are seeking approval through the state since we are a deferred jurisdiction. So we have a request for modification in. And we just actually had a meeting yesterday on this with the state fire marshal, trying to hammer out last details. So you should expect that we will probably propose an S version of this that's going to include their requests. They won't approve the deferred jurisdiction request without their modification. So we're hammering that out with them to try and make it possible. And it's all to do with safety, to make sure that all the right safety precautions are taken.
Can I ask a question?
How much more time do you need, Andy?
I can run through the rest of these. We'll have a second chance tomorrow to go over.
I have a quick question for you, but I'm going to ask Ms. Ross to ask it for me.
Thank you.
I have heard in some places where they have this, they've had to add, like Seattle where it's high earthquake, they've had to add on so many other safety measures that it becomes cost neutral with having 2 staircases. Are there a lot of extra things that you had to add to make this safe?
Not a ton, structurally, not a ton. What we're requiring is clarifications on things like the fire alarm or smoke alarm integration. Typically on a lot of these, you'll have smoke alarms in your unit, right? And if you take one out, no one's going to know until the fire inspector comes through and goes, hey, you took that out, put that back in. Now these are going to be integrated to a fire, what is the term?
Fire alarm system.
Thank you. To the fire alarm system, and it's monitored. It's a monitored fire alarm system. So if one gets taken out, everyone's notified that it's been taken out, right? That's not a big change. It's not a big cost increase, but it is a monitoring system. So that's a big change that we've done for that. And restrictions on the staircase itself to make sure that this is a safe space for those residents to get out, right, in case of a fire. So there's big increases on safety for the staircase itself, but we are not proposing at this time big modifications structurally that's going to increase the cost. These will probably not pencil out for large lots, right? Because you have a large lot, you have plenty of space. You want to put in more than 4 units per floor. That's a limitation that's been in the base code for a long time, up to 3 stories. We're just saying that you can go up to 6 stories now. So this is for postage stamp lots that wouldn't be able to do this construction otherwise. Okay. I will run through some of these. We have horizontal wet venting and circuit venting. These are 2 things that we have restricted in the past for the Uniform Plumbing Code. We are now opening the floodgates to allow this sort of stuff. Yes, pun intended. Please enjoy. So that's a big, good change. It allows more autonomy to the contractors and engineers to make choices that make sense for their building. Modification in parking space requirements. We require unit heater plugs basically at the exterior of buildings. And we have a small modification to say that up to 50% for 9-plex and larger, up to 50% of the required number of outlets on the exterior can be reduced up to the number of parking spots actually provided, since we no longer have parking minimums. Change in the International Energy Code. This is probably a big one. But it's mostly just a visual change. We are in climate zone 7, but we have historically reduced our requirements to climate zone 4's standards. That would be like Seattle. We are much colder than that. And the Energy Code Committee felt very strongly that we should be pushing for higher energy conservation on our buildings, especially our new buildings. This would be in our current construction. The R value minimum is R21 that we put in our walls. That's a 2x6 wall construction with that insulation. What the code wants you to do for energy conservation is do that and then put 2 inches of continuous insulation on the exterior. So the code committee felt very strongly that we should be pushing for the enhanced, but did not feel strongly enough that we should be stopping construction from happening for what you can actually build right now. So what we've done is put 2 columns in. There is the minimum, which is the same as what we've always had. And then there's the enhancement. This is to educate the public on if you want an energy conserving building, you should do the enhanced design, but we will approve your minimum design. So it still puts all the control into the owners of the buildings and the developers to do what they think is right, but at least tries to educate them on what is best for the community and energy. This is another significant change for the existing building code. Before 2018, we had a policy in place that required that if you had a low insulation roof and you wanted to increase the insulation, you're going to be holding a lot more snow on your roof now because it's not going to melt and drain away. So we wanted you to verify that the roof could structurally support that load. When it was adopted into the code, a subsequent AO actually modified that to say it was only applicable to buildings built before 1970. However, buildings built after 1970 often have really thin insulation, and then they come back and retrofit with thick insulation for energy conservation. We could not enforce that you needed to get that checked. And so what we've had is people call in and say, hey, my roof is sagging after I've had this retrofit. What's the problem? And it's likely that their building was never designed to hold 40 pounds per square foot, which is our minimum design snow load. So that's holding more snow, it's deflecting more, and you can have issues. The code committee felt very strongly that we should not have this limitation at 1970. It makes sense to put that limit at the actual thickness of the insulation that you have on your roof. So we went back to what was previously there, and we added the exception for cold vented roofs, which is where there's already cold air running through your attic. If you increase insulation in that space, it helps with energy conservation, but will not drastically increase the snow load on your roof. This is an elevator one. I'm going to just skip it for now because we can have a long conversation about it tomorrow, but there's control space issues that we feel we have a good answer for. The elevator manufacturers feel less confident that we have an issue that they want to resolve at all, but they have not given us a cost associated with making this change. And we are supported in this change by the International Union of Elevator Constructors, our local elevator union. So for safety reasons. And our last 2 items are going to be residential dwellings. There's a dwelling unit separation requirement every unit is supposed to be fully separated from the other unit with a fire separation wall. So if you have a duplex, you're going to have a 1 hour wall separation. This has been harder to achieve on existing buildings where you want to turn a single family home into a single family with an ADU or a duplex. And now you have to go in and retrofit in this 1 hour wall. There was an appendix proposed that's included in the residential code that addresses this for ADUs. And after it was recommended for adoption, what we did was subsequently turn it into an actual section in the code. We don't want to confuse what an ADU is with zoning's definition of an ADU. And so we don't use the term ADU. What we say is the limitations are going to be based on the dwelling unit size. So the proposal is if you are under 1,200 square feet, if your addition is under 1,200 square feet, you do not have to provide the fire separation between the two units as long as all of the smoke detectors are interconnected between the two sides. That means if there's a fire on this side, the smoke detectors will go off over here, the smoke detectors will go off over there, and everyone can get out safely. If you are over that size, or you don't want to interconnect them because you don't want to like be bothered by your neighbors cooking, then you will have to put in the fire separation because it's a risk to the lives of the people in the building. And finally, the AHBA is very happy with this option. You don't require pressure treated glulam beams or pressure treated lumber for decks. We now allow them, if they can protect the beam, it will not have to be pressure treated. This is supposed to be a cost savings and a timeline saver where they may not order the right lumber. And so it shows up and it's not preservative treated. They can just put in now a regular non-preservative treated lumber and paint it and cap it and ice and water shield it. Previous versions of the code have allowed just paint or stain and then assume it's a maintenance item. But what we found is that you usually do not maintain it. And so you end up with these beams failing, crushing and rotting slowly over time. And it ends up being a big cost later. So this is our middle ground of protecting the tops of them and still requiring the paint and hoping that they will maintain. So that was what they decided. And that's it.
All right, great. Wonderful presentation, chock full of information. We'll go back and dig into it. A few questions and Member Brock.
Yeah, I think this is probably more just a request for tomorrow's work session because I know we're short on time. But you brought up the I guess two separate things. One is the mobile food units. I'm curious why just food units? I was just imagining, let's say I bought a Connex and I'm selling hats or something like that, right? So with those, is there a scenario where there's something where it's not a food vendor, but it's in the same building? And I don't know if like the, water, wastewater, those kinds of sanitary issues are the difference, but just curious about that. And then more generally, you mentioned those shelter units. It made me think of the ordinances that we passed in the last few years around 3 and 4 plexes, relocatables, all of those kind of building code changes. So just making sure that those are reflected in here, whether they're incorporated or maybe there was an update that needed to be made anyway. And so it's changing that underlying code, but just making sure, because we have made all these changes outside of the normal 3 to 6 year cycle of the building code. So just maybe you could speak to that at the work session tomorrow.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. Because I imagine the intent was not to undo any of that up.
No, correct. And we got the version of the code that we started from was with from the recorder's from the clerk's office. And it was the most up to date. Since we got it, we haven't had any changes to the building code specifically. There have been modifications to zoning code with relocatables, but nothing's changed in the building code with respect to that. Okay. Yeah.
I don't see any additional questions. And just for the record, glulam beams. I feel like we came onto this body and that was a burning question. And middle ground resolution, good work. Thank you for the presentation. Look forward to the work session tomorrow. And a lot of good work in there for folks to process. We appreciate all of the staff time and the community members' efforts to that. Now we'll go into the next item. It's a discussion I sent around. So online, there is a one sheet document with some essential questions around this concept of discussion. I shared it with members so that we all have some basis of the conversation. And for me, the conversation is, we'll just talk about it here, shopping cart containment and municipal disposal policy. As we all know, especially during breakup season, we see lots of trash and those unsightly things in right of ways all over the place. And in addition to trash and other things, we see shopping carts everywhere. And especially I'd say close to where shopping carts are originating from, big major retailers. So it's been some time that I've had people kind of ask me, what do we do about these shopping carts? What could be done about them? And I've had some conversations with code enforcement just to kind of get a sense of what have other people done about shopping carts in other jurisdictions? And is there, what are these types of questions? So I have a framing of the questions, and I'd love to just read a couple of highlighting questions that are my top level questions, and then see if there are any at least initial discussions from members to kind of get a temperature check. And then I wanted to get a sense from the person that I talk to often about this, Scott Campbell, to see kind of what code enforcement's thoughts are after our discussion. I hope to walk away with at least some sense of for the public, what could be done, what isn't being done, and how they can participate. And so this item is intended for a discussion around abandoned shopping carts in Anchorage. There's no ordinance introduced at this time. Goal is to gather initial feedback from committee members for drafting legislation. The question, are abandoned shopping carts sufficiently widespread enough concern to warrant municipal legislation? In which areas of Anchorage is the issue most pronounced? Are current enforcement tools adequate, or is there a regulatory gap? And then I guess the top lane question from beyond that is, to what extent should retailers be responsible for preventing shopping carts from leaving their property? And I think those are the kind of the largest questions that all the other questions will feed into. Is there a responsibility? Whose responsibility is it? And are there things we can do as a body or as a municipality to help communicate the differences of those types of questions? And so I want to see if any members have any initial reactions, any initial thoughts to those questions that and I'll start off with a stack from Mr. Johnson, Member Brawley, and then if any member online taps in, we'll get you as well. Member Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to dig into this more. I think what would be helpful, from my perspective, if there's some way we could sort of get a sense of what's the scale of the problem. And even better, and maybe this is too much to ask for, are we seeing certain trends? I mean, I just feel, yes, abandoned shopping carts are a nuisance, but just this is purely my experience and anecdotal to feel like it's becoming less prevalent. I feel like the wheel locks are becoming more common. So I guess I would kind of wonder if it's already sort of taking care of itself in a sense that more retailers are putting in measures to prevent shopping cart thefts, and if we're seeing a measurable effect. So, again, I'd be happy to dig into this, but it'd be nice to kind of get a sense of like, what is the scale of the problem, right? Because if we're going to weigh that against what are the impacts, potential cost to the community or retailers, I think it'd be good to sort of define what we're trying to fix.
Yeah, no, I think this is a good question. And my first reaction was basically, these are private property by a private business. And so it seems like it should be their problem, right? But I think where you're pointing out is where they do become the public problem. Or, it's not that the retailers want to be taking these carts and throwing them in the trash or whatever happens with them. So I think that's my main thing. And then I think the question really would be, what is the business responsibility? And I think digging into that and what other places have done is important, because I've dealt with industry in various capacities, and I know often there is a push for good reason to say it is the individual's problem, it is the user's problem, it is somebody else's problem, right? And then that is a deflection from responsibility. And not to say that everything should be the retailer's responsibility, but that is a trend. It happens in every industry because they're limiting liability, right, and responsibility. So I think really asking, you know, what other places have done, but also being cautious before we say, and that the city's going to spend resources on it, which I think is built into your questions already. But yeah, I think it is definitely worth asking about. And I think I think Mr. Johnson said we've seen less of that, but I imagine it's still happening. So I think it's a still relevant question.
Anyone, any members online? I didn't see if anyone flagged that they had a question. You are, and you have a question. I'll put you into the stack. I would love to at least hear from code enforcement, and Mr. Campbell's here with us. Can you give us a sense of, at least to the one question that may be able to be addressed today, is the scale, or what is the issue, if there is one at all? And identify yourself for the record, please.
Yeah, Scott Campbell, Chief of Inspections, and Supervisor of the Code Abatement Group, to the chair. You know, we receive quite often complaints regarding shopping carts around town. Various areas seems to pop up more, like you said, in the springtime when the snow melts, and those carts are able to get pushed around on the sidewalks a little easier. From our standpoint as code enforcement, it's something that is probably one of the lowest tier items that we deal with, since most of our problems we deal with on a daily basis are regarding life safety. So it's kind of a lower priority for us, and probably something that is going to be very difficult for us to enforce on, as we have limited staff to do that. So I did a little bit of research regarding this, and what I found is other municipalities have a tendency to go one way or another. They beef up their code enforcement numbers, and the municipality pays for the enforcement side of things. There's ways that, you know, there's cities that collect carts and put them in a compound and charge the retailer to get those out of, you know, lockup, so to speak. There's other municipalities that do the wheel locks. I've seen, you know, most of us seen that when we go to Fred Meyer. So that, and then there's other municipalities who, if they, you know, find them off site, they fine the property owner for finding that cart off site. So it really boils down to what level of enforcement we can afford to provide.
Well, let me follow up on that question. What are the retailers' responses now when there's a call from us about the shopping carts in the right of way? How responsive are they for that property today? I know the answer, but let's hear what you got to say.
Not very responsive.
Not very responsive. So on the one hand, seasonally, I think you made a point around winter, and then the summer, the warmer months, and the ability to move a cart off property through snow or through kind of regular ground might increase. And I think that that's probably true. So as my colleagues think of the decrease that you may see, it may be seasonally, for sure. But I'd also note that regionally is the other question that you identified. There are certain areas where it's highly prevalent, and it's probably where the carts are.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Right. So it is interesting, and I think in the research that Mr. Campbell has provided for me, just to kind of add this to the mix, the fundamental relationship between the responsibility of the retailers, not only in their property, but in their operation. Are they good businesses? Are they doing the right thing by the community? And I've raised that question because the two sides of the retailer question with respect to public safety are both, I think, this cart question, and then I think the shoplifting question that has happened kind of in tandem for some time. And I wonder why retailers are now adding shoplifting prevention more robustly than I've noticed when I don't know of any jurisdiction that been investing in that as a regular modus operandi of business. So it's like we waited for APDs and investigatory teams to get really robust on shoplifting for the retailers to do something about it. But as shoppers are going into the store, it's the store's responsibility, from my mind, to make sure that environment feels safe for us to go spend our money in. And so the full stop is there when people leave the street, when they leave that business and they're committing a crime from within that business outside, then obviously they will engage. But the first line of prevention seems like it's the responsibility of the business. And similarly, is there a difference between Red Apple and Walmart with respect to the sheer amount of carts and how they care about the carts as they leave the community? I think Red Apple probably has a higher degree of caring about their carts walking off their property than a Walmart mega corporation. And I could just see anecdotally what I think are the businesses with the most carts in the streets. And I'll leave that off so that they can just identify themselves. But it certainly is an interesting question. And I would flag one creative solution that I saw from another jurisdiction was to compel the businesses to work with the locks. And I think some responsible businesses are doing that now. And you don't see their shopping carts on the streets as often today. So that's happening. But working with the populations of community that essentially are really low barrier, really entry level, and they figured out a way to kind of activate some degree of a work plan around community cleanup and these carts. And so the dollar value associated with supporting the cleanup goes to the value of the carts and to the business. And so there are ways that creative jurisdictions are thinking how to support the public interaction. But let me say it like this. Mr. Campbell, what happens when a cart is not picked up today from a vendor? What happens to that cart when it's on the municipal right of way or it's in our parkland, for example?
It's going to be tough for us to find enough time to send somebody out to get that cart, pick it up.
But we're picking them up though.
Yep.
And we're covering the cost today of the removal of some of these carts that businesses write off, essentially. Don't even really come out and look for them. I have never seen a Walmart van driving around my neighborhood picking up the carts, right? And I see lots of Walmart carts across my community. So it's an interesting question. There are many more questions on this, but I hope that colleagues will consider the questions we have today. Staff will think about some of these things as well. And I'm interested in a follow-up. So if anyone wants to follow up on the conversation with Mr. Campbell, I think that's the right place in terms of both what would it take to have a more robust educational awareness and let alone enforcement campaign, and then the resources that may otherwise be out there on the table that we are already footing the bill for, that we are not capturing to some extent. Shout out to Parks and Rec because they take all the carts that wind up in a park or a trail land, and they're not there anymore. And I don't know what we do with those carts particularly, but I don't think Walmart really is looking for them either. So, and I'm trying to pick on that one vendor, but they seem to have a lot of carts on the street. So thank you for the opportunity for this conversation to bring it. I think it is a timely one, and I don't know what the particular space is, but if we can get a sense of scale, to Mr. Johnson's point, maybe there's a project here, and maybe we can help. Cool. On that note, we do have one person that I identified earlier, Mr. Baxter. Do you have a few moments? Would you like to have your comments now?
Yeah,
Please identify yourself for the record.
I'm Wayne Baxter and I live in Fairview. And I rode bicycles and in the wintertime since 1990. And my thing about bicycles is sometimes I feel more safer on my bicycle than I do in a car. And a lot of times people got the perception that bicycles are dangerous. It's not. Probably walking as a pedestrian is probably the safest thing you can do. And a lot of times I see like they didn't back in the olden days, back when I started doing it, one of the things that started it, you got numbers on pedestrian lights now. That started after I think, and I think a lot of times is if it wasn't for my trucks with stickers on it, I'd be riding my bicycle more, but I like driving my trucks around and showing off agriculture. And a lot of times, and I've been to Denmark, and my family, my relatives are from Denmark, and they're big on bicycles. I mean, there was a railroad station, and there was a railroad station there, and there were 3,000 bicycles around it. And I just have to think that there's a lot of, I've been riding bike, and a lot of times people, they just hop on a bicycle and just ride. There's things you need to know about riding bicycles in a city. But that's all I have to say.
Well, I appreciate that. And on that note, I would say our city does a really remarkable job, and a shout out to the fire department. In the summertime, they provide helmets with the grant with our state partners. And right now it's smoke detector season. And so making sure that all of our community partners are also aware of check your smoke detector batteries. We've just had a couple of fires, even in my district. And there was a fire department gave away smoke detectors this week, actually, in a trailer court in my district. That work is important. Thank you for raising the safety awareness, Mr. Baxter, and we'll call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.